People have held a mass protest in southern Beirut to condemn the Lebanese government's decision to disarm the Hezbollah resistance movement. The protesters chanted slogans in support of the anti-Israel resistance movement as they rallied in the southern Beirut neighborhood before launching a motorcycle parade. The controversial decision by the government has also divided the Prime Minister Nawaf Salam's cabinet. 5 ministers quit the Friday afternoon cabinet session where the anti-Hezbollah decision was made. The ministers said they acted in protest against a debate on the resistance's arms that they said was unconstitutional and failed to reflect the viewpoints of major coalition partners Hezbollah and Amal. And to talk more on the situation in Lebanon, we are joined by Mr. Tony Gosling joining us. He's an historian and investigative journalist joining us from Bristol, UK. Yep. Mr. Gosling, as always, good to see you again. Mr. Gosling, your thoughts on the US basically forcing the Lebanese government to disarm the resistance, and are critics right in saying that the move will only serve the interests of the Israeli regime, and also it would make the Lebanese government, or Lebanon, basically defenseless?
Well, the United States has not forced this, have they? I mean, this is the Lebanese army, who've always seen themselves as a bit of a rival to Hezbollah. Hezbollah, in many ways, I think, are more inspired. They are much more canny to global politics and the pogrom against Islam that's been going ever since the September the 11th attacks, and before that, very much like the Nazis' pogrom against the Jews in the run-up to the Second World War and during the Second World War. So Hezbollah, I think, are more clued up to geopolitics than the Lebanese army. But the Lebanese army are doing what the United States wants, and they shouldn't do that. Of course they shouldn't. The United States and the UK and the Western powers have always used this tactic, divide and rule, haven't they? So what they've done is they've managed to separate out these two elements within Lebanon, hardened the sides, as the intelligence people call it. In other words, rather than have two complementary forces, the Lebanese army and Hezbollah, both fighting the same wars and the same battles with similar aims and the same aims, they've managed to get them at each other's throats, which of course serves exactly the purposes of the Israeli and the US plans. So what you're looking at now in Lebanon with the confrontation between Hezbollah and the Lebanese army is a similar kind of situation that we've had in Syria. So that clearly is the obvious aim of this, is to turn Lebanon into the next Syria. In other words, to set forces in there against each other. And I've noticed, by the way, that the Irish army are in Lebanon, the peacekeeping force of the United Nations from Ireland. And the Israelis have been dropping grenades from their drones next to the Irish army, as well as shooting very close to them. So the Irish are now thinking, well, maybe we better leave. But they're supposed to be there as a kind of buffer peacekeeping force. So there are other forces in Lebanon too. But the Lebanese army are doing what many armies do. So, for example, the Pakistani army's done this, the Egyptian army has done this, and they've sold out and they're selling out to the Americans. And they are traitors to their own people.
Mr. Gosling, the cabinet meeting comes as Israel continues to bomb Lebanon on a daily basis, as they say, violating the ceasefire agreement in place. So why isn't the current government moving in the direction of confronting the aggressors and the occupiers like the Israeli regime? And also, in your opinion, Mr. Gosling, does the Lebanese army even have the capacity to defend its borders?
Well, no, I don't think it does. I mean, I would say that many of the soldiers and the officers in the Lebanese army will not be agreeing with what their leaders are saying, because they do see themselves as fighting shoulder to shoulder with Hezbollah. I mean, if you think about what's happened to Hezbollah as well in all of this, these decapitation strikes that have taken place really are horrific war crimes, the sort of thing that there should be an outcry against around the world. But you can also understand it if the Lebanese and other countries where this has happened, obviously in Iran, and amongst the Palestinians, this sort of thing, it is likely that the retaliation may be a similar thing. So in other words, literally to assassinate senior Israeli leaders. Now, I think you have to understand the seriousness of what the sort of thing that this could lead to, and in a way, it could be a propaganda victory for the Israelis. But yes, I mean, the Lebanese army hasn't really got anything like the ability to fight, and one of the main reasons they don't. And everyone that looks at this conflict must understand the importance of morale. So the leaders of the Lebanese army are undermining their own soldiers' morale by saying, actually, we're going to go along with the Americans here who are sidling up to and lining up with the Israelis. And one of the reasons for all of this is that there's been a massive economic warfare campaign by the IMF, the United States, and many other countries in the West against Lebanon. And so because the economy is in such a bad situation, this creates a great opportunity for international organized crime and for obviously bribery of senior officials, as we've seen in Egypt. You know, senior army people are now owners of large industries, etc., and in Pakistan too, and various other countries where the army is bribed by the West, largely by the West, sometimes by other countries, but mostly by the United States and the Israelis. And they become nothing to do with protecting their own people, but just people who are trying to feather. And this destroys the morale of the soldiers who are fighting in that army. So this is the depth of the treachery of the senior people in the Lebanese army here. On a positive note, though, I think it's nice to end with, we've got a big weekend of protests in London here, supporting Gaza, supporting the Israelis, stop the starvation of Gaza, and there's big confrontations with our government, with our central government, because the banning of Palestine Action, the non-violent direct protest group, this is being confronted in your face by protest groups in London this weekend. So what they do is they'll go and they say, I support Palestine Action, openly in front of all the police, and the police are forced to arrest them. Sometimes they just simply can't arrest all these people. And of course, it is quite right for anybody to support non-violent protest against genocide. They're doing the right thing. And this will be happening in London this weekend in support of those poor people in Gaza who are desperate to have some kind of peacekeeping force to protect them from the nuclear-armed doomsday cult now run by Benjamin Netanyahu.
And we will definitely be covering that as well. Thank you, Mr. Gosling. As always, Tony Gosling, historian and investigative journalist, joining us from Bristol, UK. Mr. Gosling, thank you for your time, sir.